This Prison Chronicles episode, I'll be doing a profile on Ernesto Sundance Martinez. Ernesto, in his early childhood years growing up in Indio, California, grew up in a very volatile home with a father who verbally and physically abused his children and their mother. His mother used meth and heroin in the house when the kids were young. Ernesto was the second of 4 children and the oldest boy, and due to this, he often attempted to intervene when their father was abusing their mother. Sundance was very close to his paternal grandmother, as she was the one of the only adults in his life that did not struggle with drugs and alcohol. She was a very loving individual that reportedly made homemade tortillas for anyone that was around and doted on her grandchildren. A cousin described Ernesto as his grandmother's favorite. He would frequently retreat to the small house where she lived on the family's property in Indio. When she died from a stroke in 1985, when Ernesto was 9 or 10, his cousin Barbara Garza told jurors on the second day of testimonies he just closed up. Shortly after her death, his family moved to a small town, Globe, Arizona, from Indio, California. He was a troubled youth, constantly in trouble, and then at the age of 14, his best friend committed suicide. After that, he was distant, his younger brother Ramon Martinez said, both figuratively and literally. He wasn't really around after that. Starting in 1992, Ernesto was sentenced to the Arizona Department of Corrections for 2 counts of escape and an aggravated assault. He was sentenced to 2 2-year sentences and a 10-year sentence respectively. He was ultimately released on parole on August 27, 1994. He immediately absconded and left to California. In mid-August, Ernesto drove to Globe from California in a stolen blue Monte Carlo to visit friends and family. Once in Globe, Ernesto learned that his parents had moved to Payson, Arizona. After finding this information out, Ernesto went to visit a friend of his named Oscar Fryer. During his conversation with Oscar, he asked Ernesto where he had been, and Ernesto responded that he had been in California. When asked if he was on probation, Ernesto responded that in fact he was on probation and had absconded and now had a warrant for his arrest. According to Fryer, Ernesto pulled out a gun, a .38 caliber handgun with black tape on the handle. When asked by Fryer why he had a gun, Fryer alleged that Ernesto stated it was in case someone started something. Fryer then alleged that he asked what would happen if he was pulled over, of which he said that Ernesto stated he was not going back. Sometime after this conversation, Ernesto left Globe and drove to Payson, Arizona. On August 15, 1995, at approximately 11:30 a.m., Ernesto was seen at a Circle K in Payson, Arizona. He bought $10 worth of gas and proceeded south down the Beeline Highway toward Phoenix, Arizona. Ernesto was driving extremely fast and passed several motorists, including a car driven by Steve and Susan Ball. Simultaneously, Officer Robert Martin was patrolling the Beeline Highway that morning and pulled Ernesto over at milepost 195. As they passed by, Susan Ball noticed Officer Martin standing at the driver's side door of the Monte Carlo while Martinez looked in the back seat. Shortly after Steve and Susan Ball passed, Ernesto shot Officer Martin 4 times with the .38 caliber handgun. One shot entered the back of Officer Martin's right hand and left through his palm. Another shot passed through Officer Martin's neck near his collarbone. A third shot entered Officer Martin's back, proceeded through his kidney, the right lobe of his liver, and through his diaphragm and lodged into his back. A fourth shot entered his right cheek, passed through his skull, and was recovered inside of Officer Martin's head. The hand and neck wounds were not fatal. The back and head wounds were. After killing Officer Martin, Ernesto took his 9mm Sig Sauer service weapon and continued down the Beeline Highway at speeds over 100 miles per hour. Ernesto again passed Steve and Susan Ball, which they found strange. They began discussing how not enough time had passed for Neto to have received a speeding ticket because only a few minutes had gone by. The couple lost sight of Neto until they reached Gilbert Road. At the red light, they were able to take down his license plate. Ernesto passed through Phoenix and arrived in Blythe, California at around 4 p.m., where he called his aunt for money. At 6 p.m., he called his aunt again because she had failed to wire the money he requested. Finally, at 8 p.m., after growing very impatient, he entered a mini-mart in Blythe and at gunpoint stole all of the $10s and $20 bills from the register. Ernesto killed the clerk, Randip Singh, with 2 shots to his chest during the robbery, using the officer's 9mm Sig Sauer. Later during trial, the shell casings found on the scene would be a point of contention as they were not found during the original evidence sweep of the premises and were in fact found sometime later, leading Ernesto to argue to the jury during the trial that they were planted, as they were the only evidence that tied Ernesto to the second murder in Blythe, California at the Day and Night Mini Mart. Later that night, Ernesto drove to a cousin's house in Coachella, California, near Indio. Around noon the following day, August 16, 1995, he took his cousin and his cousin's wife out to dinner at a restaurant in Indio. After leaving the restaurant, he noticed he was being followed by a police car. His cousin asked him if the car they were in was stolen, and Ernesto responded by saying, "I think so." Ernesto pulled over onto a dirt road and told his cousin and his wife to get out. They did in fact leave the car and went to a nearby trailer compound and called his cousin's aunt to come and pick them up. After Ernesto dropped them off, he turned around on the dirt road. As another police car appeared on the scene and headed towards Ernesto, he jumped out of the Monte Carlo and ran towards the trailer compound himself and jumped the fence. He then ran into Johnny Acuña's trailer, which was a friend of his. The SWAT team evacuated the area and tried to communicate with Ernesto. However, having failed to do so, the SWAT team negotiator threatened to use tear gas. Ernesto finally responded by saying, "I'm not coming out. You'll have to come in and shoot me." After further negotiations, however, he did agree to come out and was taken into custody. In the pictures taken during his arrest, you could see Ernesto smiling as the police search him. While in custody, Ernesto made a phone call to his friend Eric Moreno, and while laughing, he said, "I got busted for blasting a jura." Jura is a Spanish slang word for police officer. Ernesto also told Moreno that a woman on the highway may have seen what had happened. They talked about the guns, and he told Moreno that one of the guns had been stashed. Officers obtained a search warrant and found the 9mm hidden under a mattress in the trailer of Johnny Acuña, of which Ernesto had been hiding. While at the Madison Street jail awaiting trial on the 6th floor, Ernesto met multiple carnales and became esquina, and twice he stabbed detention officers in Madison. He hit the ground running, trying to earn the Emmett patch, and did so pretty fast, having shown carnales that he was willing to do anything that he was tasked with. It helped that he was housed on the 6th floor and was able to meet so many carnales that were going through there during his time up there. After a trial in Maricopa County, a jury convicted Ernesto Martinez of first-degree murder, 2 counts of theft, and a misconduct with a weapon charge. The judge sentenced Sundance to death on August 18, 1998. Once on death row, he became friends with Daniel Dizzy Montaño, a high-ranking carnal that was also on death row, and was able to use this relationship to his benefit within the organization. In 2010, Riverside County, California decided to finally charge and take Ernesto to trial for the murder of the store clerk, Mr. Randip Singh, amid much pushback due to the fact that he was already on death row in Arizona. In the 20 years since Ernesto had been inside, he had taught himself the law, and so he defended himself in the Riverside case. The county attorney once said, "It is scary how intelligent he is. I just want to get him out of our jails." Ernesto scored 120 on his IQ test, a score that is higher than 90% of the population. On another psychological test, Ernesto was shown to have elite nonverbal problem-solving skills, which makes him craftier than almost everyone. He is incredibly dangerous because he's so bright, Riverside County Attorney Mike Hestron said. During pretrial, Ernesto fired his public defender and was able to manipulate a county judge into appointing his girlfriend as his paralegal, which meant she could call the jail and have unmonitored phone conversations under the guise of legal calls. Then she billed the county for the time spent on these calls, some of which turned out to be sexually explicit phone calls. In a court hearing on April 17th, the judge asked Ernesto how he was doing. His response was, "I'm housed here in Riverside. All is well, living the dream." Ernesto was originally housed with other inmates at the Robert Presley Detention Center in downtown Riverside, but on December 13, 2011, 6 months after being extradited to Riverside County, he allegedly requested to be housed with another inmate, Leroy Gutierrez, an alleged gang shot caller and convicted murderer, and proceeded to stab him over 50 times in the head, neck, and chest with a homemade shank. While doing so, jail guards tried to subdue Ernesto, firing pepper spray and pepper balls through the food slot in the cell door, but the assault continued until the guards opened the door and rushed in. Ernesto, according to the officers, stepped away from the victim, then casually slid his shank across the cell floor. As the guards took him away, other inmates began to cheer. Ernesto smiled and gave them a thumbs up. According to court documents, word is the stabbing in the county was a favor for the California M, and in doing this favor, Ernesto was looked upon highly and ultimately made into a California Carnal, which caused some dissension from both organizations due to his membership in the Arizona M, and ultimately caused Arizona and Ruben Melendez specifically to turn its back on Ernesto. That, of course, was just the beginning. There was politics on the California side going on as well, with two sides for and against Ernesto. Ultimately, it is rumored he is a carnal in the California M in good standing. Ernesto was charged with the stabbing, which Leroy Gutierrez from Corona, California, survived, and was tried for attempted murder simultaneously with the murder that originally brought him to Riverside County. However, in a strange twist, Ernesto called the victim, Leroy Gutierrez, as a defense witness, and Gutierrez supported his argument that he had attacked Ernesto first, and he had actually been stabbed in self-defense. During closing arguments, Ernesto told the jury, "You heard him when I asked him, what would you do if you had taken that knife away? He said he would kill me because that's the kind of guy he was." Prosecutor Cook encouraged the jury to disbelieve Gutierrez. Witness testimony and other evidence showed Martinez had leapt on his victim while he did push-ups, jabbing him in the neck. They stopped counting at 50 stabs, Cook said. He was going for the jugular, literally. In the end, Sundance was found guilty of the murder of the store clerk, Mr. Singh, but was found not guilty of the attempted murder stabbing of his cellmate in the Riverside County Jail. He was sentenced to life in prison plus a 10-year enhancement for the weapon charge, and then sent back to Arizona's death row to await execution. Upon Sundance's return to Arizona's death row, he had to deal with internal politics due to his membership in the California Mexican Mafia. Most Arizona carnales felt his loyalty could now be questioned, as he now considered California M members his carnales as well, and some wondered out loud if an issue was to arise between the two organizations, who Sundance would stand with. Ultimately, Ruben Slackjaw Melendez made the decision to cut Sundance off and place him on the green light list. Some California members agreed with these sentiments as well. However, as of now, his status within California is unknown. This Prison Chronicles profile was of Sundance Martinez, who sits on the Arizona Department of Corrections death row and has been there since 1995. Thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.